Well, big thank you to Hack RVA for these badges. I have to say, I picked up my son last night after leaving here, and he saw that in the cup holder of the car. He said, "What is this? This is cool." And he's playing with it and making sounds that I don't know what he did, but it has a lot of function, which I didn't play with. I guess after the conference I will. But he thought it was the coolest thing. And I got up this morning and there was no battery life left, so I had to replace the battery. I don't know if anybody else had found that. But anyway, big thanks. And also, just a thank you to all the speakers, just a wealth of information being presented up here on stage. I'm not sure about this one, but you all can give me that feedback. But my name's Steve Holliday, and I'm excited to be here. And what's exciting is this conference in our own backyard. I mean, I don't know who's traveled from where, but I'm right here in Richmond, and so to be able to come to something like this and be able to participate in this way is just awesome. So big thankful for that. We're going to do a discussion around CMMC, and I'm not going to put myself out as a CMMC expert, right? My background, operations management, in the early days of ISO 9000, worked with that with manufacturers, and later as a technology leader, I did a little bit of investigation at ISO 27000. One of the things about those standards that first of all, they're global, so the power of them is tremendous, but we were early in ISO 9000, let's say, and the early standard was here, and then over the years, they raised everybody up over time. And one of the things that really I thought was interesting with CMMC is wherever you are in your journey. I mean, back to ISO, I mean, if I had waited 10 years to jump in, the standard was up here. It was already a much higher bar. It was harder, right? Whereas with CMMC, that wherever you are in your journey, you kind of map a course and you progress over time. So that was one of the things I was just like, wow, that's great. So I was excited about it, and I'm like, I want to share that with others. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about, in order to kind of paint that picture, I'm going to have to get a little bit into the details of the standard, and I hope that's okay with everybody. But anyway, that's a little bit about our conversation and how it became to be. So, and with that introduction, you get my point about, so CMMC is a requirement coming from the Department of Defense, and so I wanted to make this conversation applicable to everybody, and so it's that whole maturity model concept that is what is intriguing about it, and that's why you should care. So a little bit of background. I mean, I work for Cherry Bekaert. Cherry Bekaert is a public accounting company, and if you'd asked me 20 years ago if I was going to be working with a bunch of accountants, I would have said, no, I don't think so. But what is really great about working at Cherry Bekaert is, and I'm not trying to, this is not a sales stage at all, but there's an intense passion for people's businesses and helping people's businesses and helping to manage risk. And so Cherry Bekaert, if I weren't in the Richmond community, I probably wouldn't have heard of them, but they're the 25th largest public accounting company in the country. Let's see, 25, so Southeast U.S. mostly, but we're growing. We've just bought businesses in California, so we're kind of spreading out. And there's three primary sections in any public accounting company. You typically have tax, you have audit and assurance, and then you have advisory. And so I'm part of the advisory business, and while I don't go out and do cyber specifically, I have that background. I'm in CIO advisory service. That's my role, is to come in and help companies with information technology strategy and moving them forward. We're organized around verticals, so where I like to spend a lot of my time is industrial, given my background. So a little bit about me. That MBB it's Master Black Belt. I spent quite a lot of my career in process improvement. You know, it's not the karate type. I used to get that joke a lot. You know, it's like, you're a black belt? Ooh. But it just means that I spend a lot of time helping companies with process improvement. And so the CISM, that's why I'm up here, because I'm earning I'm earning CPEs. I've got requirements around that. But in my past, over 20 years of industrial experience, 16 years at GE. Tredegar's a Richmond company. I spent 10 years there. 6 years in financial services, and also a couple years in wholesale distribution. So I've moved around in different industries, and it was always that process improvement element that helped me do that. It's, you know, you go in, you ask questions, and there's a method of helping companies understand the processes and opportunities for improvement, and that's really was kind of the way I jumped around to different industries. How I came to IT is kind of a funny story. I was on the leadership team at Tredegar, the films business, and we didn't have an IT leader, and the president kind of looked at me, he's like, well, you're the most technical at the table, why don't you take IT? And so I said, well, yeah, no, I've been around it quite a bit through process improvement work, and you know, I'll give it a shot. You know, I understand the business applications. The infrastructure side is kind of new. The security side is kind of new. But over the time, I had good people around me, and I learned. And so now I'm, you know, helping advise companies in information technology. So my background, educational-wise, got a mechanical engineering degree from Duke University and an MBA from Illinois State University. Outside of work, I enjoy fitness, family, and fun. You know, everybody's definition of fun is different, but we enjoy travel, just being with the kids and enjoying life. So fun fact about me, I have visited 47 of 50 U.S. states, and the 3 that I have yet to visit are North Dakota, Montana, and Alaska. And I was so bummed because I thought I was going to get up into Montana on one trip out to the west, and my family just, they mutinied and said, no, we've had enough, no. If all you want to do is go up there to say you've been to Montana, we're not part of that. So anyway, that's me. A little bit, I just want to kind of get a sense of you, right? Some backgrounds. And so show of hands, do we have people who are in manufacturing? We got a couple hands go up. Professional services, okay. Healthcare, financial services, and nonprofit, government. All right, so we're all over the place, aren't we? You're in a technology business, okay. Real estate or construction. All right, okay, and so what did I miss? Education, okay, we got education. What else? I'm just trying to get a sense, you know, a perspective so I can help steer this discussion a little bit. And so background, are we mostly information technology, security, information technology, okay, information security. Okay, all right, we found, that makes sense because we're at a security conference. So, but I've already admitted that I'm not information security, but you know, this is a business presentation. So it's not going to be as technical, I think, but anybody in a risk management function? We do have some risk management, great. Okay, so does anybody, is anybody currently under the requirements of CMMC? So, I know you two. All right. Okay. So before this presentation, who has heard of CMMC? All right. All right. So, okay. Thank you for enduring that. And then a predecessor of CMMC was NIST 800-171. So if I said that, how many hands go up? And again, thank you for enduring that. It just helps me, so as I'm going into the details, where I can move a little faster and such. So background, the CMMC stands for the Cyber Maturity Model Certification. And so this is right out of, I think, Wiki, a training certification, third-party assessment program of cybersecurity in the United States government and defense space, aimed at measuring the maturity of an organization's cybersecurity processes toward demonstrating compliance with protection of federal contract information and controlled unclassified information. I've heard some people call it CUI, I call it CUI, I don't know, but anyway, those are the two big elements that you've been entrusted as an organization with information from the federal government. It could be contract information, it could be that confidential, unclassified information. And so the standard is really built around what are the things that you're doing to protect it. And I think the parallel that I would draw to any organization, what is your CUI? Every organization has information that it needs to protect. Not all information is equal, right? There's some information that you don't care if it gets out in the public. And in fact, there's public classified information. There's press releases and things like that. But what is the information that is valuable to others that are outside of your organization? And what are you doing to help safeguard it? So a little bit of background, I guess. Now, right now, I got an email. So again, I'm not a CMMC practitioner. I help companies to implement technical solutions that will help them better comply with the CMMC standard. That's where my role is. And a lot of that also means that, well, gee, I have to read it and I have to understand it. And so I've done that. And there's a couple of different ways you can meet the elements of the standard. You can implement technical controls, which are fixed pretty much, right? You've locked something down so that it can't be done. You can't deviate from a particular control. Or there are procedural controls, and procedural controls are manual and they tend to break down. And so companies a lot of times want to go after those technical controls, and we achieve those through the use of information technology. In this CMMC timeline here, and the point all I want to make here is it's fairly new, and the standard itself is evolving. There's a version 2.0, but the version 1.0 is what I'm going to talk about. That's the latest information, at least at the time I was preparing the presentation. But it is broadening, and so the Defense Department is pushing it deeper through the supply base. And I've read where, hey, maybe this could be a good reference model for other entities that are doing business with the federal government. So it's starting in the defense supply chain. Maybe it has implications more broadly. So I would keep an eye on that. But in essence, this timeline is giving companies time to begin their compliance journeys and to push it deeper into their supply bases. So the standard is made up of essentially, you've got the model, right, and then you have domains. And so there are 17 domains in CMMC. And then connected to the domains, you've got processes. And so you've got a set of processes, there are 5 of them, that cut across all domains. And then as you come down the ladder here, you get to capabilities. So there are 43 capabilities that are broken up across the 17 domains. And I'll give you a flavor for, I'm not going to, this isn't a presentation on all 17 by 43 by, I'll choose samples, right? So you get a flavor for what I'm talking about. That's all I need to do in order to make my point. But so you've got capabilities, and then nestled up under the capabilities are practices. And so it's actually at the practice level that the assessment happens. And there are some good documents that are out on the internet. NIST publishes a document on CMMC that goes through all the detail, and it provides all the control points. So there's 706 control points in total when you look at this. And so that's what an auditor is going to come in and evaluate and say, are you doing this? Show me. And so it's down at that practice level. That's where the rubber hits the road. So that's the structure. And this, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are the 17 domains on things like access control, how are users being authenticated and allowed into the environment, asset management. It could be both the information, it could also be the assets that you're managing to allow access to that information, awareness and training and so forth. So you get a sense of the different domains here. And then on the right-hand side, you've got an idea of the levels, right? And so on the process side, you've got, okay, at level 1, this is what's performed. And then at level 2, the expectation is it's documented. What you have is documented. And then at level 3, it's a little bit more mature. It's not only documented, but you're managing to it. And then at level 4, that you've started a feedback loop. There's a review process that's happening, and you're in some form of continuous improvement. And then in level 5 is optimizing. And if anyone's familiar with maturity models, this is a very common framework of, I'd say, crawl, walk, run, right? And so you're running, then when you're up at that top tier, and you've built the system of continuous improvement. And that's the other reason I'm really excited about the CMMC. I mean, it's really, it's a standard, man. But the idea that it's a journey, right? You're never done, and that's what I believe about security. That's what kind of probably drew me and gave me a lot of energy around security. Is it's always evolving, and you always have to progress, and you always have to gather feedback and navigate. So on the right-hand side, you've got the practices, and so at the lowest level, it's basic cyber hygiene. Things like computer access. Do you have screensavers on your computers? It's really basic. The timeout so that a computer workstation's not left wide open. Do users have unique login IDs, right? Are they shared IDs? Then you get into intermediate cyber hygiene, good cyber hygiene, where maybe at level 4 you're being a little bit more proactive, and then at 5 you're advanced and progressive. So what does that mean? Proactive may mean that hey, we're seeing things happening and we're anticipating, right? And we're taking steps around things before we really need to. And then the advanced progressive, you're looking down the road, right? Maybe you're looking at threats that are on the horizon, you're bringing those back into your environment, and you understand the assets that are in your environment and the use context, and how those threats may play on the different assets in your environment. So again, it gives you an idea about progression in maturity. This, I think I've pretty well covered this, right? Where it's level 1, it's performed, it's documented, managed, reviewed, and optimized. But along the bottom, this is the important part of this slide, is your basic safeguarding of FCI, federal contract information. When the government issues contracts with you, they want to know, is the information that I'm giving you, how are you protecting it, and how are you keeping it safe? Now, a federal contract isn't going to have the same kind of information as drawings of might be a Navy vessel, where you've got layouts that maybe there's nothing that's top secret clearance, but it's not information that we want to fall into the hands of our enemies. And then in level 2, you're beginning to focus then on the CUI, and then increasing levels of protection over the CUI, and until finally you're looking at reducing the risk of APTs, advanced persistent threats. So, flip one. Whoops, wrong way. This will give you a little bit of understanding to, okay, when I talk about the 5 processes, what are they? And so there are no processes at level 1. But when you move to level 2, they're looking for documentation. So each practice is documented, including your level 1 practices. And then also a policy exists that includes all activities. And so this moves across all 17 domains. So at level 2, you're beginning the documentation of your system. And I'm just a quick aside, I mean, I work with a number of companies in the small to medium business space. And documentation, you know, how many people, because when you're trying to run your business and you're running on a slim margin, there are so oftentimes that documentation just doesn't exist. And so getting this process started, hopefully that's not the case for bigger companies, but anyway, just getting documentation started. And some entrepreneurs would say, why do I need documentation? Because it's about, you know, saying what it is you're going to do, and then letting everybody know, and then managing yourself and holding yourself accountable to it. As you move to level 3, obviously you've got the first 2, but then it adds a plan. A plan exists, is maintained, and resourced that includes all activities being all domains. Right? And so you're actually planning. You've got an idea of the things that you need to implement, so maybe costs, resourcing, schedules, right, in terms of implementation. Right? That's what's meant by planning then. As you move into level 4, you add to the bottom, activities are reviewed and measured for effectiveness. And the results of the review is shared with higher level of management. That's like right out of ISO 9000. It was a quality management review that you provide feedback to management because at the end of the day, they're accountable. Well, same thing with information security. And any executive who doesn't say, I own information security, let me talk to them because you're responsible for your organization's risk and the risk decisions that your organization is making. And so you need to be a part of the understanding what is going on and the progress that you're making. And so that's then this review process. And then finally, if I look at level 5, the additional process, there is standardized document approach across all applicable organizational units. So you've taken this system, maybe it was a little enclave at first, now you're spreading it out across the entire organization. So you can see my point, I mean, in terms of progression, right? One of the reasons I've got a lot of energy around this. All right? And so then if we move to practices, you get a sense that, okay, there wasn't one standard that was used that had all of this, the capabilities that were needed by this organization. There was a group that drafted this and that got this put into place. And so essentially, in my eyes from here, but far, there's some policies, government policies that define the control of federal contract information, and that's what's in level 1. And then as you get into level 2, where you're looking at intermediate cyber hygiene, then you're compliant with all the FAR requirements, but then you add a portion of NIST 800-171. And then it also includes an additional 7 practices to support intermediate cyber hygiene. So that is one of those, okay, it's outside of this standard, right? But the group looked across to different international standards and requirements of other, I guess, NATO or friendly governments, and kind of looked for the cyber best practices, and as they crafted this. And as you move into level 3, it encompasses all practices of the NIST 800 and includes an additional 20 practices that support good cyber hygiene. So again, you're moving to levels of higher control. And then there is some revisions that are happening to NIST 800-171, and that's what you're looking at in 4 and 5. So. The primary thing that I was trying to get across here, and I guess the screen's a little, I'm trying to understand why I'm spending so much time on this side. I guess I go over here. The primary thing I was trying to get across from here is that if you look at the color coding, you know, you've got kind of a white that's a level 1. You've got maybe a gray or a light purple that's level 2, right? And then the shades of purple then show the level 3, level 4, level 5, and that you know, pretty well they're mixed across all 17 domains, right? There's one that let's see, look at situational awareness, right? It's not anything in level 1 or 2. It's pretty much starts at level 3, but most everything else it's spread across the different levels. So if you're, again, I'm going to make this point again, you know, if you're just beginning out, and you're looking for a way to move forward, you know, do you jump right into the deep end, or do you kind of, you know, you dip your toe in the water and you start working on some easier things, and you move forward and you move forward? You know, and if you don't have perimeter security and you don't have a lot of technology that would otherwise keep you safe, you might want to think about doing those things too. But you know, endpoint protection and such. But you know, if you're looking at your system, this is what this is. This is a management system for cybersecurity. And what are the things that I need to start on now and move forward to progress to additional levels of difficulty? If you look at these, any thoughts on what's the most extensive? Which ones? I mean, I guess I can kind of start to answer the question and additional questions. But when you look at these, I think of extensive being, hey, you know, there's a lot of requirements there, right? So, you know, there are two areas that jump out. You know, access control is one of them, right? And then system and communication protection. You've got 26 and 27 total requirements under each of those, right? And a good blend of, you know, all the different levels. Now, that little green arrow is, I tried to pick one of the easier ones. You have to dive deep. So media protection, to me, was there's only 8 total requirements. So going into the details, so this is an example of what you would see then if you then were to dive into the details. Now, first of all, it kind of took me a little while to figure this out. So, you know, time for confession here for a second. But when you look at the numbering, so MP, media protection, right? So those, if we went back to that pyramid chart, every one of those domains had a 2-letter acronym. And so MP, media protection. So that's not the part that took me a while to figure out, but the part that took me a while to figure out was the number right after it, the .1. Well, that's level 1, right? And it seems pretty elementary, but I guess it was lost on me for a little while. And so, you know, with level 1 here, you've got sanitize or destroy information system media containing federal contract information before disposal or release for reuse. Right? That's basic. Then you move to 2, that you've got to protect system media containing CUI, both paper and digital. Limit access to CUI on system media to authorized users. Control the use of removable media on system components. So that's level 2, right? So how many companies have locked down so you can't put USBs into those USB ports, the memory sticks, right? That's level 2. Or if you allow it, what are the controls around it, right? Maybe there's an encryption requirement, and that USB will only work in a company computer, for example. Or if it's used outside, it needs some kind of a login and password. That's the way we would protect the mobile media, and of course it's encrypted. So see the 998, 999, those are the process. That took me a while to figure out too. It's like I should have started with all of the documentation that I am sharing here, I jumped right into the details and then kind of brought myself back up. It's like, hold on, is there any kind of an overview document that would help as a roadmap? So that would be a recommendation for everybody. And so 998, document the CMMC practices to implement media protection policy. And then a 999, establish a policy that includes media protection. Right? And now we move into level 3. Level 3 would be you mark media with necessary CUI markings and distribution limitations. So what does that mean? If you're a company that's been entrusted with CUI, then if you've got some kind of a document labeling classification capability electronically, you're classifying documents so that you can control it using DLP tools. Or if you're able to make prints or somehow check out media, that you maintain logs, right? Who took it, and then that you record it back in. That's the control. And then the next, prohibit the use of portable storage devices when such devices have no identifiable owner. Seems pretty basic. 124, control access to media containing CUI and maintain accountability for media during transport outside of controlled areas. Again, that could be electronic. That could be, hey, I had to make a paper printout, and what are the controls that you put in around the protection of that? Then implement cryptographic mechanisms. This is still level 3 to protect the confidential CUI stored or on digital media during transport unless otherwise protected by alternative physical safeguards. So encryption, right? And then 997, 996, 995, now we're back to the process requirements. And so the process requirements. And so for media protection, there is no level 4 practice area, practice requirement. There is no level 5 practice requirement, but there is level 4 and 5 process requirements then, which if you were trying to certify, if your company, you're trying to certify to level 3, well, then you can put aside all the level 4 and 5 requirements because they're outside of what's going to be audited, right? And so, but I'm sharing them because we're talking about the maturity model. And so level 4 then is to review and measure media protection activities for effectiveness and to standardize and optimize a documented approach for media protection across all applicable organization units. So anyway, does that make sense then in terms of the structure, right? And so it's not uncommon, and this is what's good about the maturity model, is that the type of business that you're doing will define the level that you need to comply with. For some, we're just handling federal contract information, right? I need to be a level 1 or a level 2. And it's supposed to be the government's going to tell you, in the contracts, you need to be compliant with level 1 or level 3. And the stick is that at some point, no orders will be placed on companies that are not compliant with those levels, right? So that's the incentive for companies to go out and to comply. But and generally, I think the biggest majority of companies in the defense supply chain are going to be around level 3. And that's why I use that as an example. If you're level 3, then 4 and 5 really don't apply. I mean, you can go and do them because they're good things to be working on, but you're not going to be held accountable for it. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yes. So if you go back to that one chart that said level 4, 5, that's where we're starting to put practice and discipline in place around APTs, right? And so in as much as that's into the weeds, yeah, but no. I chose this one because it was short and I could get through it in a short amount of time. But if I went back to this page, right, that you can see where you do have like incident response, heavily 4 and 5, or system communication. Anyway, there are some that have higher level requirements because there's more advanced things that you can be doing in them. All right, I think we got that. All right. So I guess I kind of want to just shout out, you know, what is there anything, where is your organization on its cyber maturity, cybersecurity journey, I guess? For some organizations, they've been at it a while. Maybe you know, you've got good systems and structures. For others, maybe you're more in the beginner mode, in the small and medium market space, which I play a lot in. You know, we find companies that I'd say kind of level one. You know, they've got some basic hygiene, but need help, and especially you know, when we start thinking about their intellectual property or information that you know, that they're trying to protect, right? And the controls that they have around that, and that's where we spend a lot of our time. But, then I guess does your organization use a cyber maturity model? And you know, that's kind of a loaded question, because I'm not. Is anybody else aware of a cyber maturity model that you know, because we have standards, right? The standards basically say, here's what you need to do, but it doesn't lay it out in a way that helps organizations move in a, you know, bite-sized approach. Again, that was really the point I wanted to make here. But if anybody knows of one, I'm game. You know, it's like, which one? I'll go out and, yeah. Software assurance. Okay, great. Yeah. Gotcha. No, I think, so definitely, sitting through the presentations yesterday, you know, I don't spend a lot of time in the coding space. Now I do some due diligence in companies, and we kind of scratch the surface where we're working due diligence on software kinds of companies. We'll look at you know, the basic practices, controls, and such. But you know, in terms of a maturity model around software, then that sounds like, yeah, that's very important. No question. You know, this system is intended the entire security management system, right? So yeah, no, I like I said, you know, I don't pretend to know everything. You know, I definitely say, you know, I'm always learning, and so there may be things that I haven't come across. And again, what made this unique to me was that model that helped with advancement. So set aside kind of the Defense Department requirements, but you know, what do you see the relevance of a model like this? You know, is this make a useful roadmap? You know, as you think about what to go back and to take on, right? And so it paints all of the areas that are underneath that cyber umbrella, and it also, again, it lays out a pathway. And I think I would say, you know, the system is kind of the documented side. You know, if you've got gaps in basic cyber capabilities, you know, I'd emphasize, I've been there, right? I was in a company that, you know, we had some level of documentation, and there was a lot of focus being put on the documentation. And I said, wait a second, it's like my front door's open. It wasn't really. I'm exaggerating, but you know, that we've got technical gaps that need to be filled. And so, do you want me taking care of that, or do you want me documenting policies? And in some cases, the policies are going to be important, right? But for the most part, I'd rather make sure that my security services, my firewalls, my endpoint protection, you know, and such is locked down and secure. And I'll be working policy documentation right alongside or right after that. But anyway, that's anyway, and just anybody who wants to shout out. It's like, yes. What was the standard again? I'm sorry.
853.
Okay.
Not 171.
Uh-huh.
Is there a sort of CMMC for that standard?
Is that, okay, I'm going to show my ignorance. Is it NIST 800?
Yeah. 853.
Okay, 53, right. It's the controls, right?
It's kind of the order for equipment for 171.
Right. And so 53, there are elements of 53 that are rolled up under CMMC. But
So the question is there a maturity model that you're aware of?
not that I'm aware of. I mean, so as you can see, CMMC was kind of pieced together from multiple standards, right? And then they put that maturity model together. Any question? Yeah, yeah. Right. So that's the million-dollar question right there. So let's say I'm a defense contractor, and I'm outsourcing elements of my compliance, meaning maybe I bring in an MSP to manage my help desk. I've got an MSSP, and that MSSP may have outside relationships. Maybe they've got a SIM that's in the cloud. They've got an endpoint protection that is in the cloud as well. And so are those products, do they have to be CMMC certified? And I think the purist would say yes, absolutely, but it's not going to, that is the big debate right now. And so right now, the focus is on that defense contractor, and at some point it may, broaden into the services that they're receiving. So if you are an MSP or an MSSP that are providing services to defense-related companies, you want to look at your supply chain, and you want to look at what they're doing to comply with the elements of the standard. I've done a fair amount of work, research around here, and I'm not plugging one company or the other. AWS has a GovCloud, Microsoft has a GovCloud, and in Microsoft there's different levels. You've got the GCC, GCC High, and then DoD. And the GCC High is for level 3, maybe 4, right? DoD is the top secret type of requirements, and the environments get more locked down. And the more you can build on that kind of infrastructure, the less control audit you have on premise. And so where I'm going with that is what I've seen companies do is they build the full security environment on that environment, that stack, GCC High. So E5, with Microsoft, this is going to be their mechanism to comply with the government requirements. And again, I'm not trying to make this a plug of any product or service. I'm just sharing what I've read and what I've learned here. So, good question. And if I had the answer to it, it'd be a crystal ball, frankly. Yes. There you go. Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, and so the things I learned doing research was if you're operating on Office 365 commercial, for example, that doesn't comply. And there's a couple of things. And one is the audit, the forensics, right? That the ability to comply with some of the forensic requirements isn't robust enough there. Whereas in the Gov and GCC High Office 365 environments, they are. And so you really have to understand, and I think that's the point of the question or the statement. Really, it was hey, AWS has the GovCloud, and there are certain things that get you part of the way there, but the onus is really still on you to make sure that you're able to comply. And so it's important to understand what is the government looking for in a data center, right? Or cloud software, right? And so that answer is they're looking for the ability to do forensics, right? So if you can't do forensics, then that's a big red flag. And then the other is that they're looking for where's the data center located, the data, is it resident in the US all the time, who are the hands that are touching that data center, right? So are they US citizens? And so all of that comes into play in terms of determining the level that the data center operates on. And I guess the point with all of that is in any cloud system, any vendor that you're procuring services and support for, and you're under a requirement for CMMC level 3, then at some point, conceivably, you have to do your due diligence across your supply base. Right. Any other questions? We're wrapping up. Yes. Yep. What I've 3 years. So it's kind of you're reassessed every 3 years, and your obligation. Typically, the result of a CMMC assessment is something called the POA-NM. POEM. Sometimes it's all run together, and that's your action plan. And so your assessor lays out, here are the gaps, and you as the organization are identifying, okay, here's what we're going to do with that, and here's the time we're going to have those issues resolved. And that's the initial certification. And then it's reassessed every 3 years is my understanding right now. But none of this is, good. It kind of got pushed out because of our COVID environment. Yes, question? Right. Yeah, that's like the $1 million question for sure. So when I advise companies on strategy, I'm looking to create a simple environment. I'm a big believer in IT debt. Not expanding IT debt, and IT debt comes from a lot of different factors. One is how many different solutions am I trying to manage in my environment, right? And keeping that a smaller number rather than a bigger number. IT debt is the development work. How many different applications? How many different? I mean, it's the hidden cost in some ways. The organization may not necessarily see it, but it takes resources and it spreads them out and spreads them thin. And what I try to do is help to create that focus where there's fewer tools, or you can become experts on a platform. I'm a big believer in that kind of decision making. But in terms of what do I look for, I mean, it's different, right? It's going to be different by organization in terms of what's their current footprint, where are they now, and where do we need to move them to? And so there is no prescription, a set prescription from my perspective. Yeah, just what helps simplify. Huge. Anything else? Is there anything I didn't cover up here? Yeah, so I think I'm not going to go back over my main points because I've emphasized them throughout the entire conversation, but I do have time if there's any other questions. All right, well, I thank you, everybody. Appreciate the engagement. Thanks.